These are the best and worst legends in Apex Season 22. Now, with the legend upgrade system and many of the legends seeing some changes, the average legend is better now than ever before. But that doesn't mean there isn't a hierarchy, so let's get into it. Now, I thought long and hard about which legend or legends should go into D tier, but I came to the conclusion that no legend is actually that bad. Whether you're playing pubs or ranked, I'm not really considering mixtape because there really doesn't need to be a tier list for mixtape, so D tier is going to be left empty for now. Moving on to C tier. First up, I have Caustic. I know Caustic doesn't necessarily seem like a really weak legend to some of you, and in certain instances, he can be much stronger, like some of these smaller buildings where he's able to set up and play around his gas. But some of the problems I have with Caustic is they've definitely nerfed his gas over the last couple seasons, and now if Caustic is in his gas, enemies can see him, or at least see where he generally is because of the health bar update. They don't get to see him outlined, but the health bar is going to indicate where Caustic is, so if you're shooting him with an automatic gun or something like that, being able to track him is going to be pretty easy now. But I think the biggest problem I have with Caustic is just how fragile his gas traps are. Like, you could throw a gas trap out and one bullet will defuse it well before the trap even inflates, and it feels like it's going to take a couple seconds for the trap to inflate. So you can't be using them actively within combat anymore. And I know that's not a brand new change to him, but for now it just feels like way too many people know to shoot the gas trap, or maybe it's just a fuse cue that's going off near you and it diffuses the trap, which is just ridiculous. So they need to make his traps more sturdy, I feel like, because for a Watson, it takes way more damage to destroy, and same for Rampart and Catalyst. And overall, his traps are weak, but the one thing I could say that is a positive about him right now is with the zone overcharge buff to the controller legends, Caustic being fortified, means that he will take way more damage to down if he's in zone than the average controller legend or average legend in general, depending on what armor he's on. So that definitely benefits him, but overall, I gotta leave him in C tier for now. Next is Mirage. Now, Mirage also has a flaw due to the health bar update. If Mirage uses his ultimate or sends out a decoy, obviously the real Mirage will indicate the health bar and the decoy will not. So, there can be a little bit of confusion when Mirage ults, but if you're able to find him, well, you're able to identify him much quicker now than I think ever before. However, a good small change is with the Recon class, decoys will be highlighted in red as well as the real Mirage, and decoys will also have the shield generator hop up showing if Mirage has that equipped. So that plays into some of the confusion that can apply to a Mirage, and he's okay, but in a lot of instances, he just feels pretty weak, especially as you progress in Apex and you start playing against better players. They're much quicker to identify who the real Mirage is and who is a decoy. Third in C tier is Ash. Now, Ash did receive a buff last season with the ability to use her tactical offhand, and I think at times it's pretty good, but Ash is very predictable. And what I mean by that is the line of sight that you need to determine where you're going to go with her ultimate can often take away a lot of its outplay. Enemies can either pre-aim the portal. If you're going to portal into a team, they can get there well ahead of time and make it hell for you when you come through the other side. If you portal away, they can probably see the end of it, making it much easier to shoot you as you come out of it. Just a lot of reasons where Ash isn't that good. Now, there are some moments on this new map where I thought she played pretty well, but yeah, her tether's still pretty weak, and I think that's on purpose. Like, I don't think they want to buff it too strong because otherwise it'll just be really annoying. And then on the flip side, it will take away some of the strength from Horizon's ultimate. So she's just in this weird spot. There's a rumor that she may be getting reworked in the future. Who knows if that'll come, but for now, she's a C tier legend. Next in C tier is Ballistic. Now, Ballistic did get a slight buff where his tactical will lock on a little bit sooner than it did previously, but still overall, this tactical is pretty easy to avoid, or if you get hit by it, it's pretty easy just to wait out the duration where its effects will be felt. His ultimate is strong, and yeah, if you put the P20 or the Mozam in his sling spot, you get it akimbo automatically, which is kind of cool. And if you get those fully kitted with his ultimate, yeah, it's going to be a strong ultimate. But overall, this legend just feels very weak and sort of lackluster. He's fun to mess around in pubs, but I can't see him being viable in ranked, especially the higher up you climb. And overall, there are just so many other legends that I feel like offer way more to not only the individual player, but to the team as well. So C tier for now. Finishing off C tier is Octane. Now, hear hear me out. Octane is a fun legend to play, but when it comes to the value he brings to his squad mates, it's essentially nothing. The jump pad doesn't offer a ton, except for the occasional sporadic push or maybe getaway. But when it comes to the other skirmisher legends, well, he's outclassed in that area. However, he does hold an upside when it comes to the players who enjoy a lot of movement. Having the stim, being able to use that, coupled with a lot of the advanced movement techniques, and the fact with his legend upgrades, you can reduce a lot of the HP that gets taken away when you do stim. He is a decent legend, but when it comes to playing as a squad or playing in the higher ranks, he offers very, very little. And I'd argue that he's probably one of the worst legends when you stack him up in that area. However, for pubs, he can be a great legend to play, especially if you feel like you just want to have some fun and run around the map hitting jump pads. Now, some of you guys always bring up the fact that when I talk about a legend being fun, that shouldn't really factor into the consideration. But keep in mind, some people are just playing this game to have fun. So while a legend might have better abilities, it also may not be that fun to play, and vice versa can be true. And Octane is just one of those legends. He's fun to play, but in a lot of areas, he definitely is severely outclassed. So take that how you will. Moving on to B tier. Now, speaking of legends that are not that fun to play, well, first up is Gibraltar. But for real, Gibraltar offers a lot for his squad mates. Not too many people enjoy playing him though. With his legend upgrades and this new gun shield hop up, he can prove to be a very tough legend to fight against if he has an LMG and this hop up on it, giving him an extra 40 HP to his gun shield, which means a total of 75 HP on that thing. Shotguns are also really strong this season, which significantly benefits Gibraltar because of bubble fighting. Having a shotgun in the bubble is one of the best tactics to utilize if you want to use this legend because of the single fire nature of the weapon as you go in and out of the bubble. I like to think that Gibby can offer a little bit of everything. He can be that tank, he can anchor a bit, his ultimate is great for end games, but he can also reset the squad with his bubble and his revive animation, along with his legend upgrade if you choose the revive allies to 50 HP. So if you're looking for a legend that offers a ton of utility, Gibby is a great pick this season, especially in ranked. All right, next in B tier is Newcastle. Somewhat similar to Gibraltar, but different in many other ways. Newcastle is definitely the best legend when it comes to revives, and he's pretty good at resetting with his ultimate. The buff that he received last season to his wall being energized is actually a nice addition for him, and makes it so that he can't completely get nade spammed or spammed with a Maggie Q over and over again. However, too many people don't seem to enjoy playing him as he still has one of the lowest pick rates in the game. But with that said, and I'm going to talk more about this later on in the video, but if these gold loot bins that get reset halfway through the match are here to stay, meaning Apex doesn't change how they currently work from when I'm making this video, then you're going to see a lot of Newcastles in ranked because there are so many gold knockdown shields available in these gold bins. And with Newcastle getting a gold knockdown res coupled with his tactical and his ultimate bringing you cover, a lot of players are going to use him for the simple fact of how good the team is going to be at resetting. So I've got him in B tier for now, but there is a chance if they nerf these gold bins, he might go down to C tier, or he could come up a little bit higher and maybe even reach A tier. I'm sort of keeping him in limbo right now, but I think B tier is a very, very fair placement for him. All right, next in B tier is Wraith, and I think that Wraith is incredibly mid right now. Playing her on E District didn't really feel that impactful, and the one thing I definitely noticed is just how long her Q takes when compared to some of the other legends in her class. Now, she didn't receive any changes this season, but I think she's just not that good. Of course, you can find some success with her, and if you're solo queuing, maybe she'll be an ideal pick for that, but overall, she's just not a great pick right now, in my opinion. And just to elaborate a little bit further on that, her portal feels kind of outdated in the current legend meta. Like, yeah, in certain end games, portaling into a spot that you otherwise would not be able to access can be extremely valuable, but in all other scenarios, Wraith's portal feels like it's really one-dimensional and that enemies can outplay it however they want, and she just doesn't really offer the same amount of value that she once did. So I could honestly put her in C tier, but I'm going to be generous and leave her in B tier for now. Next up is Catalyst, and Catalyst didn't receive any changes in this update, but she did get buffed last season, and I think she's a pretty strong pick if you want to use one of the controller legends. Not only does she benefit from the zone overcharge, which is that additional 25 HP when she she is in the circle, but she also has the ability of holding down a floor in one of the buildings in E District or on any of the other maps, of course, and her ultimate can be used for a variety of different things when it comes to end game or rotating. So I think middle of the road for Catalyst is very, very appropriate, and depending on the map, you may see more or less of her this season. Okay, moving down the list in B tier, we have Bangalore. Now, of course, Bangalore has been nerfed over the past couple of seasons, and she's fallen from being S tier, but she's definitely not one of the worst legends to choose this season. A couple things to note with Bangalore this season are that if you are in the smoke with another enemy and you're fighting, well, if they hit you, they will see your health bar above you. But if you are outside of the smoke and somebody is inside the smoke and you hit them, you will not see their health bar. It does not work that way. So inside the smoke is where you'll get the health bar indication. And obviously last season, they made it so that people are highlighted inside the smoke cloud. And of course, aim assist is still disabled inside the smoke. So there's just a lot of little nuances there that have changed over the last couple of seasons if you're returning to the game, and her smokes disappear much faster now as well. But with that said, her legend upgrades do bring some power back to her, and I have definitely seen a lot of Bangalore's, or at least a good amount so far this season in ranked and in pubs. So I think B tier is a perfectly fair spot for her right now. And of course, if she receives any changes, she would rise back to the meta rather quickly, I think. Next in B tier is Fuse, and I know Fuse has been very popular among the pro scene when it comes to some of the tournaments, which is really interesting because I haven't noticed that being reciprocated inside of ranked or pubs. However, Fuse is still the same old menace. Now, one of the factors that I should mention is previously Fuse could launch his ultimate off of an evac tower and get a really wide ring of fire that allowed for the wall hacks to occur inside of that, which is a straight up exploit that Apex recently patched at the end of last season. However, pros are still using him, particularly in comp, and I think a lot of that has to do with just the annoyance of his knuckle cluster. His ultimate definitely plays a part, especially in endgame, or if you are trying to ult a building and get those wall hacks throughout the building. But overall, I think it's just about the grenade spamming and the knuckle cluster spamming. I can really stack up and just be, honestly, a really annoying thing to deal with in a fight. Another good thing about Fuse over the last couple seasons is the fact that his upgrades allow for him to take less damage from his own abilities, which was always a significant drawback to Fuse because it felt like, well, yeah, you're dealing some damage to the enemy team, you're also taking a ton of damage yourself, and so it sort of negated his upside. But I think now players are seeing that he's just a bit better now that you can take much less damage from his own abilities and you can still be that pest. So I'll be interested to see how Fuse plays out over this season, though. He could rise or fall, which can't be said about every legend. Next is Alter, and I think Alter could be placed higher up depending on the map. I think in E District, Alter has a lot of upside because of her tactical. Being able to go through floors on all of these different buildings can prove to be really, really useful, especially in some of these wonky or awkward buildings that, one, players are still learning where doors and windows are, etc., but also where doors may just not commonly appear. Having the ability to just go through the building and confuse your opponents or surprise attack your opponents can be very, very beneficial as you take your whole squad with you, of course. And they did change around some of the aspects regarding her ultimate, reducing her cooldown, increasing the travel speed when you go through it, and also probably one of the more important changes is the channel time when knocked is decreased by 1 extra second. So that means that if your teammates get knocked and they want to return to the Void Nexus, they can do it actually quicker, and they don't have to be looking directly at the Void Nexus to activate it, which was a pretty significant drawback. If I remember last season, it would be like you got knocked, you were trying to search for it, you'd press the button to go, it would do something else, and then finally you try to press it again, and then you'd get thirsted, right? So now they're trying to make it a little bit easier to use her Void Nexus, and I think that makes her a bit better this season. So she may even go up to A tier, but I think B tier is honestly really good for her right now. All right, continuing in B tier, we have Conduit. Conduit received no changes this season, and honestly, last season she kind of fell from being one of the most picked support legends due to the resurgence of another legend. However, she's still a viable pick. Of course, they have nerfed the ability to spam her tactical with the Revenant ultimate, which is what was making her so strong beforehand. Well, it was that coupled with the fact that her tactical was just really strong to begin with, and her ultimate occupied a lot of spaces. So she's been nerfed obviously since she came out a couple seasons ago. She's still a strong pick and can offer a ton of assets within a fight, particularly being able to quickly shield up throughout combat, stack an extra battery with one of her upgrades, have the support element where she can craft her teammates banners, access to the bins, etc. She also has one of the smaller hitboxes, which is nice if you're looking for 1v1 potential, but I don't see her being in the top tier of the meta, at least not right now. So B tier for now. Next is Valkyrie, and I know Valkyrie doesn't necessarily feel like a B tier legend, or maybe she doesn't feel as strong as some of these other legends that I've listed, but the thing with E District, there are a ton of walls, and her Valkyl can prove to be useful in certain situations where you may not be able to get the tower off, or maybe you don't have an evac tower, and so Valkyrie is able to move you and your squad mates from a rotational perspective better than other legends right now. Now, you're not always going to be able to get over some of these tall walls, which is a drawback for her, but the same can be said about every map. However, E District has more of these walls than any other map. So I don't know. She's in this spot where she can be strong in certain moments, but overall, she's definitely not as strong as she once was. But the other positive aspect to Valkyrie is her jetpack, right? And the fact that they fixed the bug from last season where her fuel just wouldn't recharge. She can navigate between and around some of these buildings better than a lot of the other legends, and she can do so much more fluently because of the fact of, well, she has a jetpack. She can go from floor to floor and avoid contact or reposition and attack enemies from a different angle, and that can prove to be really, really good on this map. She's also been a decent legend on Stormpoint due to the map's verticality and how there's a lot of different levels of elevation that has always benefited Valkyrie. So I think B tier is a good spot for her right now. I'm interested to see how this shakes up. The last thing I have to mention with Valk is that if controller legends become mandatory picks for squads, especially in ranked, Valkyrie can move those controller legends or legend into the circle, buffing the controller legend, holding down zone, and playing for endgame better than most of the other legends can do. So I think we're going to see a good amount of Valkyries in ranked this season. All right, second to last in B tier is Pathfinder. Now, if you want to have fun with different kinds of movement, Path is a great pick. But if you also want to die extremely fast, he's great for that too because of his huge hitbox. So you'll have to consider both of these attributes when deciding if you want to play him. Of course, his pick rate has and will continue to be rather elevated. He just has that effect on the game. I don't play him nearly as much as I used to because of his hitbox, but with that said, he can be a strong pick, and his upgrades do help him out a little bit, especially in the zipline area though, where he can move his squad mates while taking very minimal damage on the zipline. Last season, I saw a ton of Pathfinders in ranked, and I think this season I'll see the same amount. And lastly, in B tier, I have Wattson. Now, Wattson did get a slight buff with her ultimate, particularly on her level 3 upgrade, where she now can choose between the power pylon, which doubles her ultimate's HP, and the ult shield generator recharges, or she can go with emergency power, which doubles the ult shield generator rate and capacity. The reasons why Wattson is a strong legend this season, besides the controller class receiving that shield overcharge buff, is because, well, her fences take more damage to destroy than caustic traps. There are a ton of zip lines on this E District map, so fencing zip lines has always been OP, and having the generator, especially against a meta that consists of Fuse or Maggie or other damage dealing legends, can prove to be really, really strong. Having Wattson holding down areas, especially in rank, can be one of the best strategies you can utilize. Now, you could make a case to put her A tier, and I wouldn't really argue with you, but I think B tier is honestly a pretty fair placement. And I know people always get this mixed up, but I'm just ranking all the legends the same once they're within a tier. So even though I said lastly, it doesn't mean she's last in B tier. They're all sort of treated as equal within each tier. Okay, now moving on to A tier. These are some of the better legends to use this season. First up is Horizon. Now, Horizon's a really strong pick due to the simple fact that she can float her and her entire team up in the air, and she has the soft landing passive, which allows for some enhanced movement capabilities. Now, with the aim assist nerf this season, this should make Horizon a bit harder to hit in her queue. And with the new map having tons of verticality, I think she's going to be a solid pick in season 22. Now, S tier would probably be a bit too high, but it could also be a potential. I think it's going to depend on what map is in play and if she receives any other changes. Apex clearly tried their best to nerf her, at least over the course of the last few seasons. I don't believe her pick rate has dropped too low, but overall, you're still going to see a ton of Horizons this season. Next in A tier is Lifeline. Now, they nerfed her care package this season by removing the gold Evo cache if you selected that upgrade. Now, this is interesting because they had just buffed her care package like a season ago, and I love the two-step they do sometimes. It's like, okay, this legend is not good enough, and then they make some incremental buffs, maybe over the course of a couple months or sometimes a year, and then they make one last buff, and then boom, the legend becomes super popular like Lifeline did last season, where every squad had her, at least in the upper ranks that I was in, and it was because of the fact that she could get gold knockdown, gold backpack, and the Evo cache, so one of her teammates were definitely getting to red armor. Which props to Apex in some of these cases for not letting something be annoyingly overpowered for a whole year, except Lifeline wasn't really that. The Havoc was. Oh, that's a different story. Anyways, Lifeline had been one of the worst legends for the last couple years, and there was a rumor that she was getting reworked, but then after this buff, I wonder if they were like, maybe we could just keep her how she is. I'm not really sure where they stand on that, but anyways, she's still a really strong pick this season, but I can't put her in S tier because they nerfed her package. However, as I said about Newcastle and Gibraltar, with this gold bin reset thing, if it's going to stay how it is, Lifeline's ult also feels a little bit more useless because there are going to be so many gold knockdowns, so many gold backpacks, and gold helmets that getting that upgrade isn't going to be that great. And if you choose the last stand where she can self-res, we know that isn't that great either. Too many players catch on to when a self-res is going on. It can only be Lifeline, and it can only happen if she's on purple armor and if she took that upgrade. So in my opinion, it's just not very realistic to see her continue to be in the meta if they don't change around this gold bin thing. However, she's still in A tier because she's still really strong with her drone and that upgrade she can get with it, and the fact that she can get these quick revives off while still fighting or holding down while a team is trying to attack. No other legend can do that in this game because she's the only one that has this automated res. So A tier for now. Next is Rampart. Now they did buff Rampart this season by making her ultimate essentially work how Vantage's ultimate works in terms of the cooldown and how you get it. So you can now use it in portions. So off of drop, you can have about 50 bullets or so in the ultimate and get it much sooner than if you waited for the whole ultimate to come like you did in previous seasons. This is going to make her more viable. I do think that Rampart is probably the most awkward legend to play in the game, maybe next to one other legend that I'll mention here momentarily. So that's why I'm kind of like, okay, she's really strong, but are a lot of people going to utilize her? And are a lot of people going to want to play her? That's why I'm like A tier maybe too high, but overall, like when you just objectively look at her kit and how they have just incrementally buffed her over and over and over again, she's got to be up here because the walls are really strong, the controller class is strong, her ultimate's insane. When you combine all of those things and you add in the fact that LMGs just got buffed as a whole on top of this hop up, I mean, she's gotta be A tier. Will people realize her potential? Well, that will be a whole other story. Now, on the topic of legends seeing incremental buffs over the course of several seasons, well, who better fitting than Seer, who is next up in A tier. They just keep buffing him. They can't resist buffing Seer. Now, they did nerf him to the ground after he was already the best legend in the game, but every season it's like, all right, we're gonna add that bit back to his kit. And then that other aspect, yeah, we're gonna add that back too. And right now, Seer received another buff. Now for his level 3 upgrade, he did gain an additional tactical charge if you want it, but it will be minus 50% when it comes to the duration of the silence. So 2 decent tacticals or 1 good one, or you can go with increasing the passive / tactical range to 75 meters. I think this is a much better choice because they have also made it so that his passive is now quieter and his passive move speed has been increased to weapon sprint speed. This is almost what he was like when he first was released. So you don't have to stall and pull your hands out and get that scanning information. You can now be moving much faster and still getting that information. His ultimate is still strong and health bars will still persist for the duration of a silence. So if you hit someone with a tactical, you will still see their health bar for the whole duration of that. Seer just continues to baffle me in terms of how much information he can reveal within a fight and throughout a match, and they just keep buffing him. So he's got to be A tier, whether people realize it or not. on. Now this has got to be the craziest A tier lineup I've ever had, but next up is Crypto, and Crypto also received a ton of buffs this season. Now I should also mention all of these legends in the Recon class received threat vision, which means when they ADS, all enemies are highlighted in red. Now you don't get that through walls or anything, but if they're out in the open or through a window or anything like that where you have LOS, they will be all highlighted in red, which is pretty crazy. This only works while being ADS'd though. Now, okay, moving on to Crypto. They decreased his cooldown on his drone from 40 seconds to 30 seconds. They added a new perk called Off the Grid, where Crypto becomes invisible while he's in his drone. This is his level 2 upgrade, which is honestly really strong, and we haven't even seen its full potential yet. They improved a couple other aspects regarding his drone and his kit, and they also buffed him last season if you didn't know, so you can see how many squads are out, and Crypto relays that information verbally every time he pulls the drone out to see how many squads are within that 200-meter range, which is super helpful in ranked. And I just think Crypto right now is the strongest he's ever been, and you're going to see a lot of him this season. Once again though, he's similar to Rampart in the elements of he's kind of an awkward legend to play. Now Apex has definitely made that much better over the course of, well, the last few seasons, but some people are just not going to play him because of his kit. That doesn't mean he isn't super strong now, so I'm telling you, give him a chance this season, try him out and see his potential, especially if you need to fulfill that recon role in ranked. Okay, now I promise I didn't plan it this way, but this is just how things played out. Next in A tier is Bloodhound, and I know I've done 3 recon legends in a row here, but hear me out. Some of you are going to think Bloodhound isn't as good as they once were or they were last season for no other reason than just the threat vision sort of mitigates Bloodhound's ultimate a little bit. But obviously in Bloodhound's ultimate, you don't have to be ADS to see the enemies highlighted in red, and you also get the benefits of the Raven and the speed boost. Bloodhound honestly could be S tier for just the sole reason of the scan. There is no other ability in Apex where you and your squad mates don't have all of the information about the squad around you, and the scan encompasses all 3 enemies and gives you their location and then can help you make a decision of what to do next. Seer can kind of do it, Crypto can kind of do it, but when it comes to just the immediate information and the impulse on what to do after, Bloodhound scan is unmatched. Now in some scenarios this will weigh more heavily and be much more valuable, particularly in building fights or around terrain where cover is blocking your enemies. Now Apex has obviously tried to take Bloodhound down a notch, particularly in the last couple of seasons. However, they've still been a very popular pick. I'm going to leave Bloodhound in A tier for now, but I honestly thought about putting them in S tier. Now, lastly, and wrapping up A tier is Vantage, which sounds insane, but hear me out. They buffed the heck out of Vantage this season, okay? They buffed her tactical from the standpoint where you don't completely need line of sight in order to launch. You still need relative line of sight. You can't be looking in a different direction, but if there is a piece of the map blocking Echo and you're looking in that direction, you can still launch. However, you may not launch to Echo because you may base plant against some concrete, but that's a whole other story. The bigger thing that I think makes Vantage much more oppressive this season is the buff they made to her sniper's mark. The second shot multiplier is now 2.5 times. It previously was 2x. This means you can 2-tap enemies on any armor. Now, you're gonna have to hit a headshot when it comes to purple or red, but on blue, you can just hit 2 body shots and you are downing someone. Obviously, you can do that on white armor too. And with an ultimate accelerant, you're gonna have more bullets and more opportunities for these 2-taps, especially if you choose that on her level 2 upgrade. But they've also updated her passive. So there's a waypoint on the ping with the passive, and it will track enemies for 10 seconds. Now, this will not show within 100 meters, but if you are past that, you can see and get a lot of info on enemies if a Vantage pings that squad. You also get her passive on all optics now, including Iron Sight, which is pretty strong. So it may take some time, but I promise you there are going to be way more Vantages running around in Apex this season. I've already seen a ton in ranked, and once the smarter players catch on to this, the rest will follow. It happens every single time like clockwork. Vantage will be a meta pick this season. She's going to be really annoying if you played in season 14 where every game just had a ton of orange laser beams. Well, it's going to be like that, but instead you're going to take way more damage when you get hit by a sniper this time. Small tip, if you see the laser, get behind some cover. If you get hit once once, you best find cover immediately or you are getting knocked. Okay, now we're on to the best of the best S tier. I know this may sound crazy, but I'm putting Mad Maggie in S tier. There are two main reasons for this: her drill and the buff to shotguns. The drill might be the best tactical in the game when it comes to something that isn't a movement ability. You can affect and impact fights with the drill that you just simply can't with any other legend. Now, particularly in endgame, Maggie's drill can prove to be extremely valuable, forcing teams out of their confined positioning, getting info on somebody or a whole team behind some piece of cover. I mean, whatever it may be. You couple that with her passive where she gets a brief reveal of enemies being highlighted. It can give you a ton of info and allow for you to make some fast reads on what to do next after you've damaged them. The downside to Maggie is the inconsistencies in a wrecking ball. There are far too many times where this ability will stun me or my teammates when I'm so far from it, or it bounces around a million times and then just comes back and hits me. Like, I just wish they would make it so Maggie doesn't get stunned by this thing, and she would definitely be an S tier legend. S tier right now kind of feels like a stretch, but I'm putting her there because shotguns, as I said, are super strong. I'm going to cover that more in the weapons tier list. She has short cooldowns on all of her abilities, and her upgrades are honestly really helpful. Now, the pros might not be running her in competitive Apex or whatever, but that doesn't really matter a ton for this ranking. In ranked and in pubs, she's going to be a really strong and fun legend to play. Second in S tier is Loba. Now, this is also sort of controversial because Loba doesn't scream S tier for a lot of players, but here's why I've got her there. On E District right now, the loot is very, very spread out, and in some areas just feels desolate. Loba's ultimate is going to prove to be very, very valuable here on this map. Not only that, but she still remains her strength when it comes to resetting a fight if it doesn't break your way. She can queue out, craft banners, and usually allows for the best opportunity at a full reset than any other legend can. Now, when it comes to certain types of combat, you may not feel the impact that Loba has, but it really is going to come from the looting and the ability to reset. She can use her tactical to be aggressive, although most players don't. They use it to retreat and be more passive with, which is definitely the better use case for it, but she's got a lot of potential and a lot of different ways where she can help her teammates out. And lastly, in S tier is Revenant. This should come as no surprise as they did not adjust Revenant at all. Revenant's ultimate has still proven to be the silliest ability in the whole video game, and when you combine his ultimate with the shield generator hop up, you can have over 300 HP. 340 to be exact, which is just ludicrous. Revenant's ultimate honestly makes very little sense for this game, and I wish they would think about how they really want this to go forward. But with that said, there's Revenant basically on every single team in high level ranked, and they love to pop their ultimate and spray you down with a havoc, and hopefully that won't continue for too much longer, but for now it remains to be seen. Now, if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. If you're interested, you can check out this video next. Peace.